Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue aux réunions de la Comité sur l'environnement et de la protection climatique. Welcome to the meeting of 26 March 2018 of the Environment and Climate Protection Committee. I'd like to remind everyone that those who may have come with the intention to speak as delegations to any of the items, please register at the desk so that we have your request. Anyone who may have a PowerPoint presentation, you should also indicate that to our staff at the desk so that that can get loaded up. Also a reminder for those who may be here for the first time, you have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Then there will be questions from members of the committee if they have questions to you. Let's see. So if we have quorum, members here. I also would like to remind you there was one other thing, that was that long pause. We have simultaneous translation, I believe, live today. Alors, si vous voulez parler en français, il y en a plusieurs de nous qui comprennent assez parfaitement le français, mais des autres qui vont utiliser des écouteurs. Alors, si vous voulez parler en français, soyez à l'aise et puis ça sera traduit. Just a reminder that it will be translated simultaneously. So if anyone wants to follow in French and cannot do so, please help yourself to the headphones over there to my right. Right. To start, do we have declarations of interest from anyone? Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes from the meeting of Tuesday, 20th of February, 2018. Are those received? Received, thank you. We have communications, response to two inquiries that we have received. Are those received? Yes. Yep, thank you. We have 3 agenda items and an IPD which would not be held unless someone wanted to lift it. Going through the consent agenda, first of all, Community Energy Innovation Fund. We do have one speaker to that item, so we will hold that one. I believe it's just the one speaker at the moment. Item number 2, Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, transfer of funds between approved projects. Is that item carried? Carried. Item 3, to nobody's surprise, we will hold for a presentation first from staff, then from the Auditor General, and then we will go to delegations. I'll probably remind you again when we go to that item that we will not take questions to staff right after their presentations or during the delegations' presentations, but I expect we'll have a fairly extensive period of questioning to staff and, if required, the Auditor General following that. I will then try to time our lunch break depending on where we're at, because I suspect we're going to go through into the afternoon. Yes, will do. Yeah. All right. So that was just a question of whether the Auditor General will stay. I believe that was the intention, so that staff so that committee members can ask questions. So returning then to item number 1, the Community Energy Innovation Fund. We have Stu Campagna who wanted to speak to that item. The only one at the moment. Yep. Okay. Please have a seat here. I believe you've done so before. Press the button and you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Our staff, just before we start, were prepared to do a very brief presentation. Do any committee members, would you like a presentation, or having the written text, is that sufficient? I am not being overwhelmed by calls for a presentation. All right, please go ahead, Stu.
Thank you, councillors. I'll be brief. In the context of the energy evolution, I want to provide a little bit of additional context around the city's existing environmental commitments. It's not reasonable to expect council to keep this stuff top of mind all the time. So very quickly, the city is, my name is Stu Campana, I'm the program lead at Carbon 613, program of Ottawa Enviro Center, target-based sustainability program for Ottawa businesses and organizations, providing them with the tools and resources they need to set and meet their greenhouse gas reduction targets. The city was one of our first members back in June of 2016, and we currently have 33 members across the city of Ottawa, ranging from the city itself, Hydro Ottawa, Museum of Nature, to members of the business community, TD Bank, Alt Hotel, Your Credit Union, Light & Co., and organizations of all sizes. So our members, when they join, we engage them, help them engage their staff, work on sustainability priorities, help them create a baseline greenhouse gas inventory, and then work toward figuring out what a reasonable reduction target would be, develop an action plan to meet that, actually reach those targets, provide them with the resources they need to do so, celebrate the work that they've done. So the city, currently we're working with the city staff and have actually made it as far as creating that inventory and replicating that within Carbon 613 software, and we're hoping that the city is going to be working toward a target very soon. But what I really want to do is get into some of the context here, which is that many of your fellow Carbon 613 members have already set these targets in the range of 15 to 20% reduction over 10 years, collectively having committed to something on the order of 3,000 tons of CO2 equivalent to be reduced by 2028 or so. Additionally, Carbon 613 is one of 7 sister organizations across the province of Ontario under the umbrella of an organization called Sustainability Collab. In Sustainability Collab, there are many municipalities who are also working with these target-based sustainability programs towards setting greenhouse gas reduction targets. So the City of Waterloo, City of Hamilton, Pickering, Durham Region, Kingston, York Region, et cetera. And many of these have also set targets and are working towards these greenhouse gas reduction targets. And I think a worthwhile aside here that we're going to be speaking to water and wastewater and waste later in the committee meeting. These things account for a significant percentage of Ottawa's overall corporate emissions. So I think worth keeping that in mind as well. But what I wanted to highlight and underline is that there are members of Ottawa's business community, as well as municipalities across the province, who are looking to your example here and are very interested in the work that the City of Ottawa has done and are very pleased with Ottawa's leadership on sustainability issues. So thank you again for having previously committed to this, and thank you for again listening to some of the context around your discussion today.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the delegation from committee members? No, seeing none, I thank you for taking the time to attend today and for the work you're doing with Carbon 613. I know the city has got a lot of useful information and tools from what you provide and from the networking with other members of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, councillors.
On this item then, is that carried? Carried. All right. Moving into the main event for today, Source Separated Organics Program Update. I would like to set a bit of context first with some opening remarks. Then I'd like to read onto the record a motion that I am bringing, which I believe will address some of the things we've been hearing and are likely to hear from our delegations. So I thought it good to get it right out there from the beginning so we'll know that that is going to be considered by committee. To start with, I just want to remind everyone that the city has been in contract with OrgaWorld for approaching a decade now, and I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone for me to say that contract has not served the city or the taxpayers particularly well. We have spent a lot of time in legal processes trying to make improvements to the contract. Those are still not resolved at the moment. They could potentially go on for years more. that's a significant cost to the city, and it could continue to be. There are elements of the contract, such as the put or pay and leaf and yard waste, where we believe that the city is paying for services that it doesn't need to be paying for unused capacity. And then, of course, there are the items that grab the headlines just because of what they are, the dog waste and putting organics in plastics in the bins. But I'd like to remind committee members and the public that this is a big contract that has been renegotiated at last through willing partners now, and it is more than just those high-profile items. It is a large package that I believe to be, we can consider whether it's improving value, improving opportunity now for people who are not taking part to do so, and about convenience as well for some people. So moving forward to this item, we will have a fairly substantial presentation from staff, from I believe Kevin Wiley will be doing most of that, or Marilyn Journeau as well. And tempting as it is to ask questions immediately, because I'm sure you'll have some, I will not accept them. We will then move to the Auditor General. I'm not sure if he's here already yet, Mr. Hughes. Yes, he is. There we are. Thank you. And then he will have a presentation, as I said already, but we'll repeat. We still won't be taking questions at that point. We will go to delegations and go through those, at which points we, of course, will take questions to those delegations, but then probably, depending on timing, probably have a break before we come back to questions of staff, and that's how I intend to proceed this morning. I'm going to find the motion that I have. Thank you very much, Chris. I am going to read a motion, an amendment to this motion. I'm going to read it in its entirety. There are a fair bit of whereases, but I think it's important for the context here. So, Source Separated Organics Program Update is the title. Recompostable plastic products and packaging. We have not yet distributed this, have we? No. Could we do that, please? Do we have any handy yet? All right, I will read it clearly, and we'll get it to you as soon as we can. Yeah. Just checking how long it might take. We have them handy. There we go. I'll just pause for a moment while we distribute those. So while committee members will be able to read along with me for the benefit of everyone else who doesn't have it in front of them, I will read this. No, it is okay. Got it on that screen, but I think you'll benefit from me reading it. All right. Whereas compostable plastic products and packaging are a relatively new and emerging waste stream in Canada, and plastic packaging in particular has traditionally been part of the Blue Box program in Ontario, and whereas, as noted by the province in their proposed food and organic waste framework, these new types of products and packaging, especially in relation to food waste, are creating both challenges and opportunities for waste reduction and resource recovery. And whereas there is broad recognition that more work needs to be done by producers, waste processors, and governments to better integrate these materials into Ontario's circular economy as they become more common, and whereas the province has also indicated that producer responsibility should be taken into account with regards to the waste reduction and resource recovery of compostable plastic products and packaging that producers sell in Ontario, and whereas although the expanded green bin program will, if approved, accept compostable plastic bags, the City of Ottawa is not currently in a position to accept compostable plastic products or packaging in green bins due to the untested impacts in OrgaWorld's aerobic process and the increased risk of introducing contamination for the new waste stream, noting that biodegradable, degradable, and compostable do not process the same way, though consumers may see them as interchangeable, including the cost implications of doing so. And whereas the province has identified the need to consider the end-of-life management and recovery of compostable plastic products and packaging in its draft policy statement for the proposed food and organic waste framework, but has yet to identify specific standards or practices to govern this new waste stream, and whereas, in the absence of clear provincial direction to stakeholders and producers, and given the recognition of the longer-term need to make progress on this issue, municipalities like Toronto are developing proposed policies and criteria that they will use to consider accepting new materials into their waste diversion programs, including the processing technology for these waste streams. Therefore, be it resolved that staff investigate the feasibility of expanding Ottawa's green bin program to accept new items, for example, compostable coffee pods and compostable cutlery, within the first 2 years of the expanded program, and that staff report back to Council on their findings as part of the broader waste diversion report coming to Council in 2019. So we'll have an opportunity to ask questions on some of those elements and debate and potentially approve that. Afterwards, I wanted to put that on the record, as I know that we have delegations who will speak to some aspects of the report and the points that are raised in that motion. So, without further ado, if we could go now to the staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair and members of committee. We're here today to talk to you about enhancements to the city's source-separated organics program, better known as the Green Bin program. Staff have worked with Orga-World management to provide an option that improves contract terms and enhances services for residents. In this presentation, we will walk through the elements of the new enhanced contract compared to the current contract and highlight value to residents, as well as review other evaluated options for your consideration. We are here today seeking approval for a revised contract with our current service provider that expands service to provide weekly pickup of household organics and dog waste in plastic bags, increases diversion and participation rates by reducing the yuck factor identified by residents as the primary barrier to participation in the Green Bin program, helps meet new provincial legislation and diversion targets, addresses recommendations from the 2014 audit of procurement practices related to the source-separated organics contract, and ends current legal proceedings. The city's Green Bin program was put in place to divert organic and food waste from the city's landfill and put it to use as compost and other beneficial products. Organics diversion has been in Ottawa since the early 1990s, when the city started composting leaf and yard waste. In 2002, a Compost Plus pilot program was established, and in 2005, Council directed staff to implement a citywide Green Bin program, which started in 2010. The Green Bin currently accepts household organic food waste, soiled paper products, kitty litter, animal bedding, and leaf and yard waste. Since the start of the program, over 533 tons of organic waste have been diverted from landfill. The current organic diversion rate is 40% and the participation rate is 52% for curbside collection. The average cost per household for all waste diversion and garbage programs is about $35.74 per year. And in 2012, garbage pickup moved to every other week to encourage diversion. The collection of organic leaf and yard waste together, along with the biweekly collection of garbage, has saved the city approximately $10 million since 2012. The city contracts Orga-World Canada to process organic waste at their Hawthorne Road facility. Following a competitive procurement process in 2007, a 20-year contract between Orga-World and the city was signed in March of 2008. The city is currently in year 8 of a 20-year contract that has been difficult from the start. Legal proceedings started almost immediately on both sides over leaf and yard waste, which was decided in the city's favor. However, Orga-World is challenging that decision. Another proceeding over processing capacity and quality of end product is currently on hold, but if the city and Orga-World are unable to come to a resolution, this will likely continue. In 2014, there was an audit of procurement practices related to the source-separated organics contract, which revealed the contract's underlying assumptions were flawed, with the city overpaying for service it receives and council not receiving accurate or complete information prior to the contract award. In the 2014 audit, the auditor presented the following key findings related to the SSO contract. The auditor found that the put-or-pay threshold of 80,000 tons was unrealistic and unsupported by evidence, resulting in premiums being paid for unused capacity and leaf and yard waste processing. The data provided to council was not interpreted correctly or was incomplete, and the potential savings for internal processing of leaf and yard waste was overlooked. There was also a failure to include a ramp-up period that would progressively allow the city to work towards the put-or-pay threshold. The audit also found that management failed to exercise due diligence in the RFP process and that communications to council were unclear and ambiguous concerning the facility size outlined in the RFP and the ease of achieving 100,000 tons annually during the lifetime of the contract. In addition, the 2011 audit of corporate communications function found that the SSO program communication strategy did not properly identify target audiences and that the most effective methods for reaching those audiences were not adequately assessed or pursued. As a result of the SSO audit, the Auditor General directed staff to examine the impact and cost of exercising the early termination clause and assess other service delivery options. As a result of that direction, staff engaged Dillon Consulting to research current alternative organic processing technologies, to examine the cost, program implications, and benefits of different organic streams and collection approaches, to review the local organics processing market capacity, to assess the feasibility of designing, building, and operating a city-owned organics facility, and to forecast tonnages to 2030 for all organic streams. In addition to the contractual issues and findings of the 2014 audit, the legislative and organizational context was also changing. In 2016, the province enacted new legislation governing all waste programs through Bill 151, the Waste-Free Ontario Act. The legislation represented significant phased changes for all aspects of garbage collection and disposal, waste diversion, and resource recovery already in place. Staff will be briefing council on the new legislation later this year, but specific impacts to the green bin program from the provincial legislation are a proposed ban of organics in landfill that could start in 2022. Cities with curbside green bin programs must continue to provide that service. And the province also introduced new diversion targets of 70% waste diversion and recovery of organic waste by 2023 for single-family homes and 50% for multi-residential units by 2025. Additionally, there was a change to Orgaworld's management and ownership, which set the stage for a new relationship and willingness to work together that led to the successful renegotiation of the current contract. Responding to the auditor's recommendations and considering the new provincial legislation, staff reviewed the service delivery options and are recommending an enhanced contract with Orgaworld for the remaining 12 years of the contract. It is important to note, as the chair said, that before we present the elements of the enhanced contract, that it needs to be considered by committee and council as a whole. Although each provision is explained separately, they must be voted on as a package. Any amendments would require full renegotiation with Orgaworld. Presented here are the elements of the existing contract compared to the enhanced contract. Each item of the enhanced contract has been renegotiated with the overarching goal to fix the flaws identified in the audit and to offer enhanced services to residents. In the existing contract, the put-or-pay threshold is 80,000 tons per year with a 540 daily ton cap, which has resulted into $6.9 million to date in payments for unused capacity. For committee's information, the average tonnage sent to Orgaworld is approximately 74,000 tons per year. In the enhanced contract, the put-or-pay threshold has been reduced to 75,000 tons per year with a 2,700 ton weekly cap, providing operational flexibility to meet the new put-or-pay, which is expected to eliminate approximately $2.7 million in future payments for unused capacity until about 2022. Not only does the reduced put or pay avoid future payments, but it addresses the auditor's concern of paying for unused tonnage and provides the city with a manageable threshold to work with. In the existing contract, the contract contained ambiguous language, and there was no trigger to discuss capacity expansion or alternative processing technologies, limiting the city's ability to leverage changes in the marketplace. In the enhanced contract, the language is clear and specific, and there is a trigger to discuss expansion of alternative processing technologies when the city hits about 85,000 tons per year. This is non-binding. In the existing contract, there will be continued legal proceedings with associated cost. In the enhanced contract, all legal proceedings will end. In the existing contract, OrgaWorld is expected to produce compost. In the enhanced contract, OrgaWorld will produce beneficial use products, including compost and other products for agricultural purposes. In the existing contract, the contract ends in 2030 with the option for 2 one-year extensions at the city's sole discretion. The enhanced contract will have the same options for extensions. In the existing contract, household organics and leaf and yard waste are processed together at $110 per ton, with the option to include plastic bags and dog waste at $151 per ton, which cost approximately 84 cents more for the average household per month. In the enhanced contract, plastic bags and dog waste are included in the green bin program at a rate of $124 per ton, a difference of $27 per ton compared to the existing contract. This cost will average households only 15 cents per month. In the existing contract, the yuck factor was identified by residents as the primary barrier to using the green bin. In fact, participation rates show about half of residents are using their green bin, and staff estimate only about 40% of curbside household organics are being placed in the green bin. And this figure does not include multi-residential units or buildings for which diversion rates are much, much lower. In the enhanced contract, dog waste and household organics can be enclosed in plastic bags, reducing the yuck factor and need to purchase separate bags for the green bin. In the existing contract, the city has a limited ability to meet new provincial organic diversion targets, and in the enhanced contract, the city has an improved ability to meet the new targets by expanding services and addressing the primary barrier to using the green bin. The enhanced contract provides better service and value for taxpayers. It eliminates unnecessary costs, estimated to be $2.7 million till 2022, and lowers the minimum tonnage of organics that the city must provide to OrgaWorld by 5,000 tons per year. It eliminates future litigation costs and provides the best value proposition for the city. The service enhancements will cost only 15 cents more per household per month, and we're receiving a reduction for the inclusion of plastic bags and dog waste of roughly $2.8 million in year one compared to the current contract provisions. As part of the new contract, OrgaWorld is investing $9.4 million in organic processing facility improvements, of which $3.9 million is for odor control and processing upgrades. In addition, we're not locked into any contract extensions, and the enhanced service supports extending the life of Trail Road by diverting more waste. The enhanced contract also addresses the Auditor General's finding that the city overpaid for service for unused capacity. The enhanced contract also provides better value for residents through the weekly pickup of organics and dog waste, which can be placed in plastic bags starting no later than mid-2019. It addresses the primary barrier to residential reluctance in embracing the green bin by eliminating the yuck factor, and there's no need to purchase separate bags for the green bin. Staff will also introduce a pilot project for green bins and dog parks starting at the same time of the service enhancements. At this point in time, staff is not recommending to include compostable packaging, plastic packaging, such as compostable coffee pods and compostable cutlery in the green bin program. However, we will work with the industry on future potential to include these products in the green bin. With these investments, we expect residents to increasingly participate in the green bin program. The enhanced contract is also better for the environment and supports Council's priority of environmental sustainability. The program enhancements will increase the amount of organic waste diverted from landfill, which will be repurposed into a new product, ensuring a sustainable management of residential waste. Staff also expect participation to increase because the service enhancements supporting the city in meeting the provincial diversion targets. A comprehensive promotion and public education strategy will be developed to emphasize the ease and benefits of the expanded program to increase participation. The enhanced contract also helps divert waste from the landfill. Accepting more materials in the green bin and making it more convenient to package them in plastic bags will divert more waste from the landfill, helping extend the life of Trail Road. Residents also have an option of continuing to use compostable paper bags, of course. Diverting waste of landfill also reduces methane emissions. Organic matter produces methane and carbon dioxide when it decomposes in the landfill. And while the city's Trail Road landfill captures landfill gas and produces electricity from it, there is still some gas that escapes the system. The enhanced contract also targets increased participation in multi-residential units. Currently, approximately 435 of over 1,600 multi-res buildings offer a green bin program. Staff will develop a working group with interested building owners, managers, condo boards, and landlord associations to include more buildings in the program. With the acceptance of plastic bags to store and transport organics, occupants of multi-res buildings can more easily participate in diverting waste from the landfill. The recommended option also addresses the auditor's recommendations from the 2014 SSO audit. As part of the post-audit activities, staff engaged a consultant to develop tonnage projections for each stream of the organics until 2030, and the tonnages were adjusted to account for what the city actually sent to Orgerworld. The put-or-pay threshold will be reduced to 75,000 tons at the signing of the contract, eliminating approximately $2.7 million in future payments to Orgerworld for unneeded capacity and processing of separately collected leaf and yard waste. This reduction of 5,000 tons annually also represents an immediate savings of $360,000 for the remainder of 2018, and moving to a 2,700-ton weekly limit provides the city flexibility to manage to the put-or-pay. In addition, staff examined the cost and benefits of early termination in consultation with legal services and have looked at various organic streams, collection and service delivery approaches, and processing technologies, including designing, building, and operating a city-owned organics processing facility, separate collection and internal processing of all leaf and yard waste, which was deemed to be cost prohibitive, ranging between an additional $5 million to $11 million a year, primarily for separate collection. As part of the auditor's recommendations, staff conducted an options analysis of the following alternatives to the current contract. The first option evaluated was continuing with the current contract, the status quo. With this option, the city would continue payments to Orgerworld for unachieved put-or-pay, and it would be difficult to meet the provincial and city diversion targets. Litigation would also continue on both sides. The year one cost for this option would be $8.9 million. The second option evaluated was to find another service provider. Staff found that there's insignificant capacity in the local market within about 100 kilometers to process the amount of organics currently collected in Ottawa. The most viable option only has about 30,000 tons of excess capacity, and while the basic processing rate is comparable, the distance adds costs for transfer stations and haulage. This option also requires contract termination, which would likely cause an additional dispute and possible period of non-service. In addition, Orgerworld would be able to accept organic waste from other municipalities in Ontario and Quebec, including diapers, sanitary products, pet waste, because we would not have a contractual relationship with them. The year one cost for this option would be about $10.5 million. The third option evaluated was building and operating a city-owned organics processing facility. This option would require significant capital costs of approximately $47.5 million for an aerobic facility and $67.5 million for an anaerobic facility. Until the facility was built, all organics would be sent to Trail Road. This option would also require contract termination. The year one cost for an aerobic facility would be about $10 million and $21 million for an anaerobic facility. It is with considering all these options that our staff are recommending the enhanced contract. Upon council approval, staff would execute an implementation plan to meet the following enhanced service launch timelines. The reduced put-or-pay threshold of 75,000 tons would begin in Q2 2018, so the city could stop payments for unachieved put-or-pay at that time. In 2018 and 2019, and subject to MOECC approvals, Orgerville will start making capital investments for odor control and accepting of plastic bags at their Hawthorne Road facility. No later than mid-2019, the enhanced service of including plastic bags and dog waste in the green bin would begin. This is also when the new processing fee would start. An odor mitigation plan will also be developed by Orgerworld that identifies processes to control odors, and a new odor control system will be put in place in the Hawthorne Road facility. Staff are also mindful of the Auditor General's past communications audit and found fault in the planning and executing of the communications supporting the Green Bin program. A promotion and public engagement strategy will be developed to promote the program enhancements and inform residents. Staff are developing a comprehensive public information campaign emphasizing the ease and benefits of the enhanced program to increase participation. Clear messaging to residents will be developed. Staff are working with public information and media relations on all promotion and public education that will be timed appropriately to the enhanced service launch. A pilot program for green bins and dog parks will also start at the same time as the service enhancements, allowing residents to conveniently dispose of their dog waste in city parks. Staff will come back to council with an implementation plan in 2019. We have here an infographic showing all the items residents can use to collect their household organics and then place them in the green bin. Items include, starting from the top left, cereal and cracker boxes, tissue boxes, cardboard takeout containers. Residents can use paper products like paper grocery and takeout bags, compostable paper bags, and of course newspaper. Residents will also be able to use compostable plastic bags, milk bags, plastic grocery bags, and plastic fruit and veggie bags like the ones you put your produce in at the grocery store. We still strongly encourage residents to use paper bags, but with the increased number of options for disposing of household organics, more residents can conveniently use their green bin and increase diversion rates in our city. This concludes the presentation. We look forward to taking your questions on the recommended option for the city's green bin program and what we presented here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And while you do look forward to taking questions, I remind everyone again that won't be for a little while yet. So thank you. I appreciate that thorough presentation, and I know members of the committee will have questions for you. So if we could now do our swap to the Auditor General. Welcome, Mr. Hughes. I should have asked the previous staff to introduce themselves and their titles. We, of course, all know you. Why don't we do that for the benefit of the audience who have been listening to you, your roles within the city, and then I'll ask the same of our next presenters.
Isabel Jasmine, Deputy City Treasurer.
Kevin Wiley, GM Public Works and Environmental Services.
Marilyn Journeau, Director of Solid Waste Services.
Thank you. We assume that everyone knows, but of course that's not the case. Thank you very much then, and please go ahead.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président, membres du Conseil. Good morning, Chair and members of Council. Je vous assure que nous serons brefs aujourd'hui. En même temps, de la suivi de la vérification de programmes de déchets organiques séparés à la source, le Bureau du vérificateur général examine actuellement l'analyse de rentabilisation du programme de déchets organiques séparés à la source de personnel de la ville. I will be very brief today. Concurrently with our follow-up to the 2014 SSO audit, The Office of the Auditor General is conducting a review of City staff source-separated organics program business case. This review was a result of a direction from Council after staff had done their work in reference to recommendations 2 and 3. The objectives of the review, first, were to satisfy the commitment that I made to Council on the 9th of July 2014 to review staff's analysis. Second, to provide you with assurance on both the reasonableness of the key figures and assumptions in the business case and the accuracy of the calculations. The scope of our review was the March 5th, 2018 version of staff's source-separated organics program business case. This business case is one of the source documents upon which staff's reports to you are based. La raison pour cette présentation est de donner au Comité de l'environnement et de la protection climatique l'état d'avancement de notre examen. Premièrement, notre travail est terminé. Cependant, nous n'avons pas complété le rapport sur notre examen. M. Ed Miner, vérificateur général adjoint, présentera. This presentation is to brief the Environment and Climate Protection Committee on the status of our review of the business case done by staff. Mr. Ed Miner, Deputy Auditor General, will provide this brief update.
I'll now go through the status of our review. First, our review work is complete. However, we have not yet completed our report on the review that we've completed, but we have completed the work. Second, in our review, we did identify some concerns with the business case, and we have briefed staff on those concerns. In one case, they reran an alternative scenario using different assumptions in order to determine the impact for us. However, the concerns that we have identified are not significant enough to change staff's overall recommendation. These include the figures that they reran for us. The alternative scenario also supported the same option, being the revised contract with Orga World. We will be preparing a report on our review, and the report will include recommendations to improve the city's business case processes and analysis going forward. And our report will be issued at a later date.
Mr. Chair, that completes our presentation, and we'll
Thank you very much. You did promise short. Lots of people do that, but you actually did it. So thank you. I know there will be questions. I'm hearing some of them around me already, but we will stick to our proposed agenda, and so we are able to move quite quickly into delegations then. So I will get that list in front of me here. Okay. We start with, is Dave Douglas here? Dave Douglas, yes, okay. So if you could come please to the seat on my right where it says public delegations, and I will announce the lineup in advance so that people know when they're coming. Mr. Douglas will be followed by Christopher McKillop and then John Pigott. No, it doesn't end there. At the moment, we then have 12 and about 4 more after that. If all of the people who had indicated an interest are in fact here, we could have about 15 or 16 people. So much as we welcome you here, all the more important to stick to your 5 minutes, please. But then after each speaker, if there are questions, they will come from members of the committee. So please have a seat. Is there an issue there? Or you?
No, actually, I'll be very brief.
Okay. If you could press the button and bring up the microphone. If you could introduce yourself and who you're representing, and then go ahead. Yeah.
Certainly, yes. Dave Douglas with Vision Quest Environmental Strategies Corp. I'm actually here with GLAD Canada, and I've withdrawn my presentation. You will hear it later under GLAD Canada with Laura Peden will be speaking. Thank you.
I will assume we don't have questions from committee there. We will perhaps when representative from GLAD does. So thank you. Christopher McKillop. Chris, please.
go. Good morning, everybody. I'll try to keep my stuff brief as well. I don't want this to be like the Oscars where the band suddenly strikes up and I get off, so we'll just move along. I'm Chris McKillop. I'm with Club Coffee, and I want to acknowledge that with us today as well are Kate Burnett and Gina Becker from Bridgehead Coffee here in Ottawa, with whom we've been working for quite a while. In my presentation this morning, I want to cover three main points, and the first of those points is our initial responses to the report. The first point we want to make is that we want to recognize that the city and Orga World have actually made some very important progress, and frankly, from the point of view of those of us who in compostable areas at a very important time in the development of the technologies. The first point I want to make, though, is that obviously we had some very deep concerns about some of the language when we saw references to so-called pods, when we saw compostable in quotation marks. That didn't point to the kind of objective, fact-based reporting that I think the committee would normally expect, we would have thought. Nonetheless, I've had good conversations with the general manager, and I accept completely their view that there was no intention to suggest anything negative, and that we actually now have a positive tone, and I think in terms of the motion that's been put forward, I think there's a positive basis to work forward. We'll tell you more about our pods. John Piggott, who will follow me, will tell you more about our pods, but I want to move on to my second point, which is a key fact. The compostable pod works. One gap that exists in the report is it makes some comments about testing and such. What it does not note is that, and the wording, frankly, in the report is a bit murky on this. I will note that in a conversation a few months ago but with Bridgehead and with the chair, actually, the chair had suggested you guys should talk to Orga World about testing, because that's a critical question. Does the pod actually do what you say that it does? We met with staff of Orga World. We've provided them first with 500 pods and then another 500 pods, mostly from Bridgehead, but also some President's Choice and some of the other pods that Club Coffee prepares. We also supplied our expert to them, pointing out, here's a good way to run these tests, here's the best practices on compostable testing on top of the certification we already had. And they got back to us with the email, and you can see the quote in the slide. We completed the trial, they went well, the pod works. This reflects what we've seen in city after city and community after community. We've tested it, it works in Seattle, in Syracuse. We tested it in Peel, in Guelph, in Muskoka, in Orillia. In fact, not only does it break down, which isn't surprising because it's 90% coffee, and because, as you can see on the slide, the products that we use to actually make the pods, including coffee bean skins themselves, what's interesting is that, in fact, in many of those tests, and most of those tests, the pods actually break down faster than many things that are in regular food waste. And I'll just use the go into green bins today. So here in Ottawa, and I imagine that my friends will want to review this as this goes forward, I can put dryer lint in my green bin. I can put a full vacuum cleaner bag in my green bin. I can put a giant dog bone, which will never break down realistically, in my green bin. And those are all decisions I'm sure that they will be revisiting as this whole thing goes forward. So compared to those sorts of things, the pod breaks down in no time. When we did the test down in Syracuse, for example, the person running the composting center down there sent a picture of where our pods used to be and citrus skins, I think they were grapefruit skins. Grapefruit skins were still there, the pods were gone. So that's the key point from our point of view, is that in a factual thing, the fundamental issue here, if you throw your pods into a green bin system anywhere in this province, they'll do just fine, and no one has shown otherwise to this point. What that does, though, it leads us to the policy issues, and you've already referred to them, so I'm not really going to pound that one in the interests of time, but the fact is there are, and I recognize that, there are policy issues that staff have and that need to be discussed. We need to get, frankly, more action from the province in terms of moving this forward as well, and we look forward to that happening. But there's a larger context I want to point to, and that is sustainable packaging and where things are going. companies get the fact that the idea of throwaways and throwaway plastics in particular is coming to the end of that. When you have major companies like all these ones who've made very specific targets about getting out of single-use throwaways and moving to compostables, recyclables, reusables, there is a fundamental shift happening on the private sector side of the equation. And there's been so much of this change just over the last 2 or 3 years. So the timing of what we have here now is quite important. Governments get it as well. We have the G7 this year looking at plastics as part of what they want to do. So the next steps are all built around collaboration.
Just remind you that the 5 minutes are up. If you could sum up, please. Yeah.
We look forward to collaboration. And
summary.
The pods work.
Thank you very much. All right.
Okay.
All right. Questions from committee for Mr. McKillop? Please stay. I believe we have some. Yep. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious too, because there's dozens of coffee brands and pods in the market, and you're here speaking on behalf of 2 of them, and I'm just wondering if you have a sense of, are you one of the leaders in terms of having these ones where they are working in your trials, or are most pods friendly to go to a facility like Orga World?
That's actually a very good question, because it speaks to a concern that staff have, which is how will people tell them apart? How do people know what works and what doesn't? Because of the work that we've done in compostable, because of the responses of governments generally to that, what's happened is in the kinds of single-serve pods that you use in Keurig machines, which is by far the dominant model in North America, right? Essentially, the business has moved to 2 options, not 30 or whatever. There are 2 options. If it's a soft pod, and John Piggott, when he speaks, will show you ours, the Bridgehead one, in case you haven't seen it, or PC or what have you. So it's soft. As of now, all the ones that are being produced in North America are compostable. If it's the hard cup, so the standard Keurig K-cup, Keurig is moving, and they're going to complete it this year, and all the other companies, all the other major companies at least, are moving to a recyclable pod. The idea is that you can take it apart and then put the plastic pod in a blue box. How people feel about it on that blue box side, I don't know, but in a sense, it's either this or it's that, and by looking at the pod, you can tell which one it's going to be.
So other than the fact that not all coffee makers are that advanced in terms of supplying those, what other challenges are the main concerns from that you've heard as to why we won't be accepting it now?
One of the concerns, I can't obviously.
And I'll ask later, but I just want you.
Yeah, I mean, the things that we hear most often is consumers might be confused and they would throw the wrong thing in, which would lead to contamination of the green bin. And as I say, I think that that's solving itself, quite frankly, in the marketplace. I think that there are, then there obviously are the policy concerns. As we move into more of these kinds of things, what does it mean for the costs and operational considerations for the green bin? How's that going to get resolved, and how's it going to get resolved relatively consistently? So those are concerns that they have, and that's certainly that we've heard. I think the key question for us is not to say that this concern exists. One of the key issues is how material is it? How significant is it? So for instance, we've said to people, when they were concerned about people throwing, say, your standard K-cup into a green bin, I get why that would be a concern. How significant is it? How often does it happen? How much does it, like mess up the works at Orga World? So, like, is it a big issue, literally and legitimately, or is it not that significant in real life? And I think that's something that can be a point of staff.
My final question to you is, when did you come to the table? I mean, you may have heard that, we've always been talking or negotiating with Orga World. When did you come to the table to staff to include the pods into the discussion?
I actually had a conversation with staff in 2015. And at that point, staff were quite clear that, yeah, that's not happening.
Okay, and so just one discussion, and you mentioned more recent discussions.
That's right.
And those recent discussions were just as a result of the
report.
Okay.
Yeah, when we read the report, that led to a conversation with staff saying, we've got concerns about some of the wording, we've got concerns about some of the other issues, and that's led to today.
Okay, but so since 2015 and this report, you sort of dropped dropped your case on this because you figured there was no interest from the...
Yeah, there was nothing to say one way or the other. I think from staff's point of view, again, not intending to speak for staff, I think they had more pressing concerns on this file than our pods.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I have a request from Councillor Eglai and then Brockington as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you had indicated that you've tested a variety of different cities in Ontario. So how many of those cities actually accept your pod?
Well, there's the interesting question. The tests that we've done in the United States have led to acceptance. The tests that we have done in Ontario have led to, we hope somebody else accepts them first. Frankly, my joke has been battle for fourth place. Everybody wants to see some other guy do this for a whole range of reasons. And frankly, I mean, it's been a little frustrating at times. You have a product, it does what you say it does, they see it does what you say it does, and it says, well, yeah, there's this thing. And I understand the policy process. I've been on their side of the equation. I understand all of that. But I will give you one good example. In Aurelia, we did the test. They put them in, it worked, and they said, we'll do this provided that you do one thing, which we're actually at work on now. They said, can you put actually on the pod itself, like right now in the box it says compostable, can you put actually on the pod compostable? So we're working on just the best way to do that right now. And they said, if you can do that, then our collection staff will have no trouble telling the good ones from the bad ones. It'll reinforce the messaging. For consumers generally. A second thing that we're doing in that regard is we're working through PAC, which is the Packaging Industry Group, and all of the coffee companies that are doing single serve are working with George Brown College to look at what are best practices in informing consumers around the world about what to do with something when you're done with it, like for waste diversion purposes. So we're looking to see if there are things that we can do in terms of how we communicate to consumers so that they put the right thing in the right place and they don't put them in the wrong place, because that, that's a legitimate issue. We respect that. And so those are the kinds of ways going about that. But in general, in Ontario, it's been, yeah, we sure some other guy accepts it. So one of the things that we've heard is we're waiting for Toronto. Here's the fascinating thing about waiting for Toronto. Toronto doesn't have a system like Ottawa's or Peel's. Toronto has this anaerobic digestion system that nobody else in Ontario has. If it works in Toronto, it's irrelevant if it works every place else, because every place else is different. There are concerns that we hear from some municipalities in the GTA that they want to have the same messaging all across the GTA. So if I hear it in Toronto and I hear it in Peel, it's the same. I get that to some extent, although they still have very wildly different lists of what goes in their green bins right now. But Ottawa is not part of the GTA. Nobody here in Ottawa is going to go, well, they can do this, why are they telling people in Peel they can do this, but they're not telling people here? Nobody knows what anybody's telling in Peel here. So I think Ottawa is a special case for us to actually show some leadership, and I think the direction that's been suggested about let's drive to the goal on this, I think is a good direction to go. From our point of view, with our pods, I think frankly we should be in today. But if it's going to take a few months to cross some T's and dot some I's.
So I'm also supportive of the chair's motion, but you gave a very long answer. The short answer is there are no cities in Ontario that are doing this.
Right.
Okay.
For all those reasons I listed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brockington.
If I write the word compostable on this ceramic mug, it doesn't make it compostable. So
correct.
What independent group has deemed your product compostable? Because if that's the case, then I'm having trouble understanding why the city won't take it. So can you give me...
Absolutely. There's a two-part answer. The first part is that there are, in North America, there are two organizations that do certifications based on ASTM for compostability. One of them, and the one that we tested through, is called the Biodegradable Products Institute, and they're in the U.S., and they do an immense amount of testing on compostable products. The other one is Bureau des Normes du Québec, so BNQ does it as well, but they don't do much in this particular area. The concern from the point of view, and once again, I should get a job with staff because I'm answering their questions in advance for them, is that that certification, which is absolutely to those ASTM standards, does not necessarily reflect their operational standards, in the sense that they may try to put processes through faster than might be the case in the BPI standard. So that mix is where that comes.
Councillor Leeper, please.
I'm just wondering, it sounds like there's a difference between the U.S. and Ontario. Is there any difference in the biology of the processes or the mechanics of the processes that are being used? Just help me understand that.
No. What we did, but I'll use the Seattle example. We did testing to prove that there wasn't going to be a consumer confusion issue. The company that handles their compostables did the testing on our behalf. They were comfortable with the outcomes, and so they said, fine, it's good, it's in. And in fact, what happens in a number, particularly in the U.S., and it's a different environment than Canada in this regard, they're looking for ways to build understanding and acceptance and engagement with these kinds of waste diversion programs. They're in a different place than we are, so that's some of it right there. We're a good way to get in the door as far as they're concerned.
But otherwise, the process that they're using in terms of the shredding and the tunnel and the air and the heat is all the same as what Oregon World.
The inherent basis of compostability is the same. Every community seems to have a slightly different composting system, like the way the thing works. But yeah, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McKinney.
Thank you, Chair. You know, your comparisons to grapefruit and dog bones, I guess. My question to you, I mean, we're not ever going to get, fruit's a good thing, so we're going to keep fruit, and bones, well, we all need bones, so. But I wonder why we need coffee pods. I guess that's my million-dollar question is, or maybe your million-dollar question, I guess. Why coffee pods at all? There are other makers of coffee that package their little, individual coffee servings, and I think Senseo is one of them that can, easily be thrown into the green bin. Why don't you consider a change in your product?
We actually weren't, as you know, I guess first in the the Tasmo people, and then Keurig went in. Club Coffee actually just makes coffee. We came to the single serve coffee party relatively late just because of patents and such. If you look at the growth, and John Pigott will talk about this in greater things, we're simply responding to a consumer situation. People like the convenience of single serve. They like the ability to make one cup of coffee. I could literally, and I won't, go on for an hour to explain how this happened. But literally it was driven by consumers liking the convenience, liking the variety that they get, and maintaining the quality they expected.
Yeah, but that's my point exactly. There are other single serves that work, and I just wonder why the makers of pods don't consider changing your product rather than us changing the way we do our. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you for leaving it at that, because we run the risk of getting into too fine a detail on the coffee industry, as important as that may be to some members here. So we'll try to stay on the topic. Councillor Kadri was next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just a question. In terms of your pod itself, is it totally 100% compostable, or are there pieces of it that are not compostable, like the lid, for example?
No, that's a very important question. Compostable things are either compostable or they're not. They're not, in terms of what you can advertise in Canada, for example, you can't say it's 97% compostable. So in this case, it is 100% compostable, and that's what the results in the testing that we've done to date show.
So based on that response, why have you not included the word compostable on the lid of the pod so far?
Well, because you want to spend an hour on something, that's it. It's easy. It's tougher than you'd think, quite honestly, but it says it on the box, and then we're working on putting it on the lid as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions to this delegation, thank you very much, Mr. McKillop, and John Piggott is next. Thank you. Yeah, perhaps while you're waiting, if you could press the button, introduce yourself by name and who you're representing.
My name is John Piggott. I'm the CEO of Morrison Lamothe and Club Coffee, which is owned by Morrison Lamothe. And pleased to be here because we are a third-generation Ottawa company. We started on the canal about a mile from here, and today we're one of North America's largest coffee innovators. But here's the story behind the pods. These plastic pods, every day in Canada, 4 million of them were going in to the waste stream. That's enough to, when you go end to end, it would take you 175 kilometers a day. That's from Parliament Hill to downtown Montreal. We knew something needed to be done about this. We had consumer research. We had customers saying, come up with a solution, Club Coffee, including Bridgehead here. And Bridgehead pushed the bar up and said there's only one solution, and that is 100% compostability. It has to be sustainable. Why would you put sustainable coffee in something if the packaging's not sustainable? And I commend Tracy Clark for leading us that way. But here's what our pod does. The lid itself is made of paper. The ink on the lid, and I'll come to that, comes from Ottawa. The ring is made of coffee chaff, which is the skin of a coffee bean and cornstarch. 90% of the pod is coffee, and the filter is made of cornstarch. What's really neat about this, it's an Ontario-made innovation, the first in the world, and there's the different places where it's coming from. Here in Ottawa, the Canadian banknote makes the 100% compostable ink that we use on the top of the lid, and it has no biotoxicity in it. I think this is a great story of responding to the consumers, innovating here in Ontario, and doing the right thing. And we've collaborated with experts all over North America to do this. And it works. And it will break down in less than 5 weeks in most industrial situations. As Chris explained, it changes. But if you really want to know why it hasn't been passed by any municipality in Ontario, let's put the elephant in the middle of the room. It's because the municipalities are really looking for a larger policy issue to be resolved with the province. And that is extended producer responsibility, and we don't deny that. Who is going to fund this, as they have with the blue bin, and we recognize that. But what frustrates some of us is those of us that have shown innovation and are trying to do the right thing are being held hostage to not allowing our product into the system because we can't get the province and all the producers to come to an agreement. That's really the answer to some of the questions here. And that's our frustration of penalizing companies like ours that are doing world-leading innovation here in the province of Ontario, including products from the city of Ottawa. And here in our own hometown, we get potentially banned from the green bin for doing the right thing. Kind of is why I'm here today. So the other nice thing about this, if we all go this way, it actually does reduce greenhouse gases. And we've got the studies to prove it. So what we're really asking for, the support of staff to try to find the right way to work through this, and we appreciate the amendment, Mr. Chair, and I think this will allow us to do it. But I think we should be proud of the leadership that's been shown in this city by companies like Bridgehead, pushing us as a coffee roaster to do the right thing. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And yes, I'll lead off. I think you should be proud, you and Bridgehead and those who have been trying to push the boundaries, because for the points that you raised, it's not easy, and as a relatively small player compared to the big global companies, that's a challenge. If I'm not mistaken, though, you do admit, or you would admit, there is the potential for confusion at the moment of, hey, great, there's this super Club Coffee pod that's completely compostable, so all pods are compostable. There is that risk.
I think most people can tell the difference. And by easily saying the brown ring is compostable, and the reason it's brown is the color of the coffee skins going into the ring. And what's neat is this was invented by the University of Guelph. Again, another great Ontario story. So, Mr. Chair, I think it's not hard to tell the difference or point out the difference.
It's true. When you do have the two in front of you, they're clearly different. I guess the point, we're not supposed to engage in debate with our delegation, so I'll try not to. But I think that's a concern that you're hearing, particularly you're hearing from staff at the moment, is it appears that you are there or almost there in terms of the full compostability within our system, but we do have this, you've named it yourself, this provincial context and the whole industry-wide one, so perhaps I'll leave it there. It's no longer a question. So are there questions from members of the committee for Mr. Pigott? No? Thank you again then for coming and for your work in this area.
Thank you. Proud to do it in Ottawa.
So next on our list, the next few people, we have George Colgan with Bag to Earth. Is he here? I have on my notes may not attend, but George Colgan? Not attending. All right. Thank you. Did we have any written communication from him, or? Okay. If we do, we'll make a point of circulating that to committee, but we don't have a record of any. The next is Guy Annable, and he will be followed by Barbara Long. Thank you very much. Am I right? You go by Guy and not Guy, is that right?
Guy is
Guy.
great.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Facilitating this walk-on, and I do appreciate addressing our government. Without going through a huge history lesson and what I've been trying to get out in my mind for the last few days since the release of the report last Monday, and your subsequent interview on CFRA on Tuesday at approximately 1 o'clock, I would like to present and ask a few questions, if I may, and without going through too much history, confirm, and I'm really glad to see our Auditor General is sitting at the table, and I'm hoping that he will be able to answer some of the questions. That is the last time that we've been able to address the green bin audit since 2014 on July the 9th when Mr. Hughes presented it.
I do just want to say one thing, although you are totally within your rights to raise questions that are still in your mind, we don't as process directly have delegations direct committee members or staff, just so we're clear with that. You're free to say, I'm left with these questions, for example.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So through the Chair, first of all, just to confirm a few things for the record, our Auditor General confirmed in July 2014 that 38,000 tons of leaf and yard waste currently goes to the Trail Road landfill and was subsequently diverted into the source separated organic stream as part of the program to beef up the numbers that were woefully inadequate because the targets were basically not fiduciarily examined when the contract was being signed. We have a contract that we have too much capacity, 1,000 tons. We have a company who is now just changed management to a new company, and we have a new opportunity to sign a new contract and get rid of the blight and bruise that this contract has placed on us. Why would we not start over and start a new contract? Because when the company changed hands, they should have filed notice with the city, and if Rick O'Connor is here, I'd like to ask him that. Why weren't we given the opportunity to start over, and why are we continuing a 20-year contract? We're 8 years into this, and we're lessening the tonnage by 5,000 pounds when 38,000 tons was identified as leaf and yard waste, which was never meant as a source-separated organic stream. It was added in. It is a naturally compostable thing that sits at $16 a at tippage fee at Trail Road, but it takes this magic ride around the city, goes to the east end, gets dumped for 45 days, takes another trip to Trail Road, and it basically costs us $21 a ton to call leaf and yard waste organic? So my questions are threefold. Last week, you were on an interview with Rob Snow at approximately 1:15. You were asked a number of questions. You didn't have the numbers at that interview. Do you have those numbers today? My second question, I guess the answer is no. Is that correct, Chair?
No, not necessarily, but as I say, we're not here. We are here for you to present and us to ask questions of you.
So I'm asking the question, do you have the numbers for the amount of source-separated organics that represent leaf and yard waste that go to Trail Road every month on a monthly basis for the last 4 years so that the citizens of Ottawa can see that this is a date approach that was taken when we added the leaf and yard waste, and now we're being that's going down 5,000 tons is a good thing, when our capacity, we only actually need about 35,000 tons. So why not, here's just a thought out of the box, why not start the contract over? Take into account what the city needs, about 35 to 40,000 tons a year. Allow OrgaWorld to compete in the open market for other source-separated organics contracts like Gatineau, who currently puts their trucks on our roads and sends them on gasoline diesel trucks at $80 a ton. And you talk about trucks in the interview last week with Rob. If you really wanted to be green, you would rethink exactly how you're looking at this. Not continue contract for 12 more years, now that we have an opportunity to start over after 8 years, because we have a baseline now. We have a ramp-up period. We have the numbers from Mr. Wiley on how much we're putting to the curb in source organics, from the kitchen scraps to everything that we... But we are still adding the leaf and yard waste to the collection stream, and that, in my view, is one word just to start over and get this right for the citizens of Ottawa. The own Finance Committee has stated that leaf and yard waste, the extra cost of disposing of it is between $5 and $11 million a year. But we have Kevin Wiley telling us that this new contract's going to save us money? This whole thing needs to be rethunk, and as a citizen of Ottawa, and as a person who just wants respect for the taxpayer, I implore you to start over with this new company, with a new notice, and take the appropriate actions on behalf of city taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. You've made very clearly. When we have questions to staff, there may be members of this committee who want to follow up on those points, because you raise a number of valid questions.
Through the chair, if I may add to that, there is a gentleman in the city of Gatineau who is open right now to talking to OrgaWorld about basically putting his source organics on Hawthorne Road and not shipping them on a truck to Cornwall.
I am quite certain that our staff, when we go to questions from committee, can answer the questions about whether there are alternatives to it and why they could or could not be opened and started afresh. So thank you for raising that point.
Thank you for your time, Council. On behalf of the citizens and taxpayers of Ottawa, I just hope that the other side of this story gets told. Leaf and yard waste was never meant to be a source-separated organic. It is a naturally compostable product that goes at $16 a ton into a landfill, and then
Your point
tons
has
a
been
year.
made now. Your time is up. And are there any questions to the delegation? Seeing none? No.
Oh, no
Thank you for
questions?
coming.
Would you like to talk about coffee pods? There seems to be lots of interest on coffee pods.
Mr. Annable, this is not the first meeting I've been to where you've become abusive at the end of your period. I have not yet asked for security, but you're pushing it. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless the taxpayer.
Seeing no questions, if we could go to Barbara Long, and followed by Izol, if that's right, Lopez, but you can correct me on that when we come up. right, welcome, Ms. Long. If you could introduce yourself and who you're representing, and you, of course, have 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Long, and I'm representing the CAFES group, which is the Community Associations for Environmental Sustainability. And I welcome this opportunity to speak to the Environment Committee today. I have some slides here. I'm going to ask for some direction on how to flip them. So where do I go? Is it rolling? Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so yeah, so we're going to talk today about the source separator program update we've received and we've reviewed. So I'll go to my first slide. So we are your constituents, and we are concerned. Earlier this year, we met with our group. At that meeting, we had Hinchinburg, Civic Hospital, New Edinburgh, Lowertown, Centertown, and the Glebe, plus the Waste Watch Ottawa people, Ecology Ottawa, Local Eco Action Families, and New Grocery. We met for 2 hours on a beautiful morning when we could have been out doing something else, but this was important to us, and we wanted to review issues that we might want to bring forward to the municipality in an election year and also to the province. So at that meeting, we identified 22 issues, and we talked about plastic bags and styrofoam and diversion and all sorts of things. So we did talk a lot about the idea of single-use plastic bag ban in the city of Ottawa, but we didn't know, based on some experiences in other municipalities, whether it was legal and what jurisdiction we had. So we met then with David Chernyshenko and with Attorney General Nakvi to get more clarity on that. So at that meeting, unfortunately, they weren't able to answer our questions, so they have committed a more specific follow-up to create that legal clarity for us. So I thank you, David, for that. Then, fast forward, we learned then at the report, which came out in March 19th, that you were recommending the use of plastic bags in the green bins and also plastic bags for dog poo to be placed in the green bins. So we are opposed to this recommendation in the strongest terms. It appears to us to be a solution to a particular local dispute that's here in Ottawa between the world and Ottawa that will be expensive and we feel is out of step with the rest of the world. Two Canadian cities have already banned single-use plastic bags. Montreal, New Year's Day this year, and in July, Canada Day, Victoria, BC will ban the use of plastic bags. So we need decisive leadership. Indeed, a superhero would be even better. In Toronto, they had a mayor's challenge where he suggested that the high-rise buildings could compete for some prizes if they were to increase their green bin waste. So I consider him to be a hero in this particular instance. So talking a few to the quantitative issues in the report, which we've reviewed, we don't see solid evidence for the following recommended contracting option of 75,000 tons per year. For example, we don't see these metrics, the current organic tonnage, the expected tonnage with better participation with a media campaign and communication with the public, the expected tonnage if we're allowed to use plastic bags for our organics and our dog poo, the expected tonnage with clear plastic bags and or pay-as-you-throw regimes, or the expected tonnage with, again, participation improved by communication with multi-residential buildings and industrial, commercial, institutional using improved communication. So, also we want to talk a bit about here, and we understand that a great benefit of diverting this is a less of a greenhouse gas emitted. But we don't see any estimates of the benefits of this in the report. And we do understand that co-financing options for methane recovery and biodigester facility available from the federal government, and this was not discussed either. And we don't have any numbers for that. We did request a Dillon report, but unfortunately wasn't available to us to review. Thank you. So just as the Auditor General, the Auditor report as well, that there was a comment in there that resonated with us, and that was that Council was presented with select information on the project at hand, and we're wondering if this is maybe what's happening here, and we are concerned. We are concerned. So our conclusion and recommendation that we're committed to supporting good public policy on this file. However, we require more persuasive and solid evidence before being convinced that a 9% cost increase plus more plastic pollution is the best option that Ottawa has at this time. So we recommend that Ottawa stay with the status quo, pending evidence and investigation, and working on a separate anaerobic biodigester for dog waste, and ICI sector waste, wrapping up here. So discussing the option of status quo concerning dog waste, and that we continue to study this and consider a ban on plastic bags. So thank you so much for your time, and please consider taking our questions to staff. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. We had interesting questions. Councillor Leeper and Councillor Brockington asked as well, but go ahead.
Thank you. And can I just preface this with, this is my first time at the rodeo, so if I can't answer your questions, I'd be happy to refer them to the other members of the committee, and I'll get the answer to you. So I'll do my best today.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thanks, Barbara. And you know where to reach me. And thanks first off for the work that Cafes does. I know they weekends, and it's often a beautiful sunny day, and you're committed. I did not understand, and maybe you could bring the slide back up on methane.
Yeah.
What was, just help me understand better the point that you were making on that slide.
And again, this is highly technical to me, the biogas digester. So I understand that it's possible to use this material, it's a little diagram here, so it's possible to use this for fuel, and it might be possible to use it for the city's fleets. That's about all I can say.
If I may, my guess, just taking a second look at it, is that the dog poop issue?
Yes.
And that you would prefer that dog poop not go into the green bins, but that it be put into these digesters?
Yeah, there are other ways to do it. Waterloo is an example people have been talking about, where they have a pilot project, a dog bin, it's like a septic tank below the surface, and people see that in the park, and they just put their dog poo right in there.
Yep.
It never leaves the park, and then a honey truck goes around and picks it up.
Okay.
So we thought that was an excellent idea that Waterloo's piloting at this time.
So my takeaway from that is that Cafes is recommending we not allow the dog poop in the green bins.
That's correct.
Okay.
It would degrade the compost as well to a type that wouldn't be usable in most applications. We don't think there would be as big a market for it, and their ROI would be decreased by that to Orga Worlds. Yeah.
Okay. And Cafes is obviously that we put plastic bags in the compost stream either. What is it about plastic bags that you object to? And I'm sympathetic, understand.
Okay. Well, they don't decompose forever. They're the oceans are full of them. Our plastic water bottles are contributing a huge amount to in the oceans. I don't know. It seems
so
like
rather
a no-brainer.
Rather than encouraging the use of plastic bags, you would prefer this is the wrong direction in which to head. It perpetuates
the wrong side of history here. I think we're on the wrong side. The Queen recently banned plastic in all of her whatever she owns over there. So she's taking a lead here. Yeah. David Attenborough inspired her by one of his videos about the ocean's plastic problem. So that would be my answer, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Brockington.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Long, for your presentation and for the work of the group of community associations who came together for the report. In your report, one of your conclusions was you didn't think there'd be a significant net increase in the tonnage.
Yeah, we didn't have any numbers on that, and so with numbers that would help us. The tonnages, and again, these are technical issues that we could review if we had more data.
So if this committee passes, let's just talk this out, the recommendation before us today, I think one of two things are going to happen. One is the diehards who are using their will switch and start using plastic, which I think is unlikely because they're doing it without plastics now.
Right.
Or people who have been polled as to the reasons why they're not using their green bin, and the main factor is this issue with smell and bugs and other, the further incentive, the incentive will be greater because now they can use a plastic bag to help mitigate some of those issues. But if you're disagreeing that the tonnage is going to go up, then we really don't have a plastic bag problem, because the people who are using it now, I don't think are going to start using plastic bags to any significant degree. And if you're questioning whether or not there'll be a net increase in tonnage and you think it's going to be low, then we really don't have a plastic bag problem. Staff think that the overall tonnage, it will significantly go up, and we'll hear them elaborate on this when we ask questions. But I just wanted to ask you how your group came to the conclusion that you didn't think there's going to be any significant net increase in what's collected.
Okay. Well, again, I'm going to have to defer that question. Yeah.
Okay,
So
and that's
thank you,
fair,
Riley.
but I
Appreciate
do
it.
want to follow up with staff when we get
Yeah,
there.
okay. But one thing that I did want to mention as the person who lives newly in a high-rise condominium is that I wasn't even aware I could use a green bin until recently. In the condo, I'm paying for that in my waste management, but it wasn't clear to me. So I think the public education piece for multi-unit dwellings is a huge opportunity to fill up the Orga World's facility with feedstock. Okay, so yeah, so that it.
Thank you.
Thank you
If
so
we have
much.
if we have no other questions for the delegation, thank you very much, Ms. Long.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker will be, and you will correct me, Izal Lopez, please, who will be followed by Laura Pedden. Okay, if you could please press the microphone, a red light should come on. Well, it was briefly. There we go. If you could introduce yourself and who you represent, and then you have 5 minutes.
Yes, I work with BASF Sales and Business Development of Biopolymers. We'd like to talk to you about organics recycling best practices. And sorry, yes, I have an accent in both French and English, so just stay with me, please. Use certified compostable bags. The use of certified compostable bags makes residential and commercial food waste collection more efficient for quality compost. It makes the collection easier, cleaner, and safer. Past experience show that citizens collect more organic residues with certified compostable bags. It's easier because it's easy handling of the organic waste. The sizes of the bags fit the size of the kitchen catcher and the green bin. They are designed specifically for food waste collection. It's cleaner because the bin stays clean. The bags don't leak. They are designed to handle food waste or organic waste. There are no repeatedly wash and rinse of bins, so less water and detergent is used, so it's more sustainable. It's also safer because it's less direct contact with employees and consumers, reduce chance for transmitting food illness carried by mold, for instance. It's better because there is less odors. They have this particular property that they let the oxygen in and let the moisture out, so the food waste is drier with lowest odor. Studies made by BASF show that collecting organic waste in polyethylene bags leads to unhygienic conditions. This is up to different polyethylene bags that were tested. After 14 days, we saw here a strong obnoxious smell, strong development of mold, and very wet appearance of the waste. Certified compostable bags, on the other hand, they have superior performance for organic waste collection. They have leak resistance and odor reduction. So in this test, after 14 and 19 days, there was no smell, there was very little mold formation, and there is no biodegradation of the bag. This is because, as I mentioned, the bag let the oxygen in, so there is no anaerobic process in the bag. Certified compostable bags fully compost different aerobic composting plants. So certified compostable bags can be differentiated by their mark of certification. There are two in North America. For Canada is the Canadian B&Q, and for North America in general is the BPI certified compostable. So they work in windrow, static pile, gold cover, in vessel, etc. And they biodegrade into water, CO2, and biomass. And with that, I finish my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Next is Laura Pedden. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Pedden. And on deck is Duncan Burry.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding Ottawa's SSO program. My name is Laura Pedden, and I'm a brand manager at GLAD Canada, specifically supporting their waste diversion bags. As a leader in the waste management industry, GLAD has partnered with municipalities over the last decade to educate both consumers and municipal officials on how to successfully launch and transition waste management programs. The consumer is the key to the program's success, and as experts in the consumer ourselves, GLAD has the marketing knowledge and expertise to change consumer behavior and ultimately improve program performance. The City of Ottawa and the GLAD brand have a very long-standing relationship that has developed over the last 8 years through the Cleaning the Capital program. GLAD is proud to be entering its second year as the title sponsor of this event, which promotes citywide cleanups in the City of Ottawa in both the fall. In addition to financial support, GLAD donates over 45,000 bags to help support litter cleanup, keeping our communities clean and green. GLAD is looking forward to building and extending this partnership with the City of Ottawa through this SSO transition. I'd first like to take a moment to congratulate the Council on their decision to include bags within the SSO program. GLAD has spoken to Canadians across the country to better understand what their needs are in regards to compostable programs, and the addition to include liner bags will certainly help encourage resident participation and ultimately increase overall capture rates. When talking to consumers about composting, there's an overall sense of germs and ick associated with this particular waste source, and residents do feel that liner bags help them to remove that ick factor. There's also some sort of mental anxiety associated with understanding all of the municipal rules associated with the waste streams, and consumers want to get it right for the environment. Thirdly, there's a large sense of pride in Canada when it comes to our recycling and composting programs. And in fact, the municipalities that have the greatest amount of diversion rules, like Halifax and Markham on clear bag programs, have some of the proudest residents who are happy to do their part for the environment. So during this transition, I would like to partner with the City of Ottawa to instill the sense of resident pride in doing the right thing, and we feel strongly that bioresin bags are the right thing. First and foremost, bioresin bags are a zero waste solution, so they eliminate the need to landfill at any stage in the process. The bags are BPI certified and break down within the aerobic process. The bags are proven to result in significantly higher diversion rates, In communities that we've worked with across Canada, they've seen up to 3 times increase in the organic capture when transitioning from being a paper-only community. And lastly, they're consumer preferred for their ease of use. They reduce tears, leaks, smell, and overall mess, and they're incredibly cost-effective. They're 2.5 cheaper than paper bags and range anywhere from 10 to 30 cents per bag, depending on the amount of quantity and the brand that you are buying. So I'm here today to extend an offer of support to the City of Ottawa, valued at $250,000, to help aid in the transition to liner bags within the SSO program. Hundreds of communities across Canada have leveraged GLAD's marketing expertise and consumer insights to change consumer behavior and improve overall program performance. Our offer to the City of Ottawa would provide physical tampons and coupons to every resident. As the category captain, GLAD would work with retailers in the community to update provide educational displays and signage. And lastly, we would develop online and e-commerce programs that make it easy as possible for residents to participate. As the industry leader in the space, only GLAD is able to offer this level of support and education, reaching consumers at all touch points along the path to purchase. We look forward to continuing the dialogue with the city and discussing in greater detail. We do have product samples and examples of our sampling kits here today that we would love to pass out at the end. And again, we look forward to building this partnership and working with you moving forward as you embark on this. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. It's a little unusual to receive an Incentive Act committee, but we welcome partnering with the city. Councillor McKenney, you've got questions, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just a point of clarification. So do you, so as a representative of GLAD, then you don't support the use of plastic bags as recommended in this report, but you do support compostable bags, is that correct?
Certainly. We feel that the bioresin bags are the right solution from an environmental standpoint. I'm not here to oppose LDPE single-use plastic bags, but for sure we would love if the city would increase the bioresin, because we do feel that it is the right thing from a sustainability perspective.
Okay. I know. Okay, thank you. I'll let it go.
Do we have any other questions for the delegation? No. Thank you then for attending. And next we have Duncan Bury, who will be followed by Jim Pushinsky.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. I will follow your guidance, Chair, and try and keep this short. Waste Watch Ottawa has a number of serious concerns with what staff are proposing, and would urge that the report be sent back to staff for a serious renegotiation with Orga World based on the following 4 key principles. 1, Waste Watch Ottawa believes that allowing plastic bag liners is unacceptable and should not be permitted. The city should promote and use certified compostable plastic bags. As you've heard already today, there are several of those on the market and available, and they're certified, and under no circumstances, excuse me, should the city allow regular black garbage bags or grocery sacks. Types of certified bags are accepted in a large number of Ontario programs. For example, Peel, Halton, Waterloo, Hamilton, Durham, Niagara, Kingston, and Guelph, and there are many others in the province and across the country. Dog waste should not be allowed in green bins. Dog waste will exacerbate the plastic bag problem and create an odor issue that will require significant capital investment. I think staff mentioned something like $9.4 million that Orga will have to invest, and careful management to try and address. The staff report also clearly states that the compost quality will be degraded in what you have proposed before you, that right now the compost quality standards, it seems very likely with dog waste and plastic bags that you will not be able to meet the highest Ontario AA standard for compost quality. We would support the city moving ahead with pilots to look at dog waste in parks, and there are some very useful and interesting opportunities there in Waterloo and Mississauga, and they were cited earlier.
Fourthly, the city needs to invest significantly more money and effort to encourage participation in the green bin program and should do so sooner rather than later. Given some of the challenges, and the note that the province is moving aggressively on organic waste, I don't know why you would wait until 2019 to up your level of engagement and public education on the green bin program. It needs to be done now. It's overdue. In conclusion, we would ask why the city is proposing to create an environmental problem with plastic bags and dog waste, and regarding plastic bags, when proven compostable bags eliminate the issue and help maintain higher quality standards. If you allow the use of plastic bags, the green bin program may get some participation improvement, though I note that there's nothing in the staff reports, and I haven't heard anything this morning to indicate exactly what that increase of participation is, but I would agree that there will likely be some. However, the price of doing that, we feel, is much too high. You'll be creating more plastic waste, which then has to be taken out of the plant when it gets to Hawthorne Road, and you're going to be degrading the usefulness of the compost as well, and moving away from established best practices across Ontario, and in fact in many other parts of the country. The city made the right decision initially on the green bin program not to allow plastic bags or dog waste, and we would urge you to maintain that policy position. You should, however, allow the use of compostable plastic bags, and given a choice between a non-compostable plastic bag and a compostable plastic bag, why on earth would you allow a non-compostable plastic material when there is in fact documented proof and evidence that these compostable bags work, and people in fact use them successfully in other municipalities across the province and elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've got two people already, Councillors Eglai, then Brockington, and I see others as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm interested, you talked about the fact that compostable bags are certified. Yes. And that sort of runs contrary to some of the things we've heard already. They're certified by a provincial agency. What's the certification that you're talking about?
Well, I believe there's actually somebody who's going to be speaking here this morning who can speak to the certification. The bags which are used in other municipalities use a BPI certification logo. If you go on the website for the region of Halton, for example, you will find that they promote that logo very prominently, and this logo appears on the bags and in the packaging associated with the bags. So there is a certification, and I think you've heard from both GLAD and BASF that these certification programs do in fact exist, and the bags we're talking about would follow that certification.
So again, maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, maybe I have to ask somebody else, but these certifications, are these industry certifications, or these third-party certification that you're talking about?
Independently third-party certified through Bureau de Normalisation de Québec is the standards organization that runs underneath of the Canadian Standards Council, and they, in fact, with the Biodegradable Plastics Institute, are in fact independent third-party bodies which certify that these bags do in fact compost. It's the same certification program that the gentleman of Coffee Club mentioned for his coffee pods.
But it's something that hasn't been adopted, to your knowledge, by the provincial government on a province-wide basis?
No, it's a market-driven process, and if a company produces a bag and they want to be able to certify and claim that it is compostable, they do it against the compostable certification standard. If there's a bag that says compostable and it doesn't have the BPI or the B&Q logo on it, you can assume it's probably not compostable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Murray, for your presentation. You said the quality of the compost would be compromised by including dog feces. Is it because of the feces itself, or because it's wrapped in the plastic bag, which is contributing to that degradation?
I'm just quoting what the staff report says. They do in fact confirm somewhere, I think it's on page 14, if memory serves you right, of the source separation overview report, that the quality of the compost will be degraded. It's not explained exactly why. My suspicion is it's a combination of the two things. If you end up with plastic which you have to remove, you tear the bag, you end up with certain pieces, you're never going to get 100% of that plastic out, which degrades the compost, but certainly also I think the fecal matter is another potential issue as well. So I can't speak to the specifics, but the staff do in fact confirm that the compost quality will be less if you add plastic bags and dog waste.
Okay, I'll follow up with staff. The examples given of the plastics that could be used that staff listed were those, shopping bags, the produce bags you get at the grocery store, things that probably 95% of people in this room have in their cupboards and closets in their kitchen and hallways. Are there any merchants in Ottawa who, as part of a bag that is used to transport goods for customers, automatically use compostable bags? Because everyone has non-compostable bags at home. Who has compostable bags at home that the merchant has given them?
I don't have any definitive information. My suspicion is that there will be some companies that perhaps sell bags and sell products in bags that have claims to be compostable. I think the vast majority of those kind of carry-out sacks and are in fact non-compostable plastics.
I will argue with no one who says the addition of plastic bags to the overall system produce a lower quality compostable product. But what I'm having challenges wrapping my head around, as soon as we ask people to buy anything to participate in this program, we're not going to have a full subscription rate. And so what we're going to have to wrestle with is, do we want more stuff diverted from the landfill and maybe include some plastic bags, or do we soundly reject that today because we're concerned about the quality by allowing plastic bags in it, but having significant less product go to the landfill? And I think that's what I'm wrestling with is, yes, I don't want plastics in the landfill, but I want significantly more waste diverted. Right. How do I deal with that?
Well, we would agree that you need to divert more organics, absolutely. That's a major objective, and the fact that this is before you is an important step forward for the City of Ottawa to address the challenge. That these kind of bags are in fact used successfully in all the municipalities and many other that I did in fact cite, and there are many more. So people do use these bags. You can actually buy some of these already, I think, already in the marketplace. They're not widely available in Ottawa because Ottawa explicitly doesn't allow them. So in fact, if you change that, then I think people will do it. People will do the right thing if you give them the opportunity, and it's been proven elsewhere, and that the rates of participation have gone up. So the bottom line is, given a choice between a non-compostable plastic bag that's going to create a problem for you at the plant and a compostable bag that's certified to biodegrade, there's no choice there, in my opinion. You go for the certified compostable bag. That's clearly the option that I think works.
I'll just say below, everyone has a green bin. Everyone can participate, yes, and the majority are choosing not to. We have a green bin. And so how do we get people to participate more in this program?
Well, I think you do two things. I think, yes, you facilitate participation by allowing these kind of certified compostable bags, and you also significantly up the amount of money you spend on promotion and education. When Waste Watch Ottawa reviewed this a year ago, we found the City of Ottawa was spending something in the order of 50 cents per household per year on education and promotion. Most other municipalities were spending twice or four times that. So, that's a problem that needs to be addressed. It's a budget issue. You need to increase, in the order of up to sort of 300,000 plus a year. We're nowhere near that. So that's another problem that needs fixing.
Thank you very much. Next, Councillor Cloutier.
Thank you, Chair. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. And Councillor Brockington, Mr. Burry touched on the angle that I was going to address. The fact is now that we have only 40% participation in the green bag, in the green bin program, and I presume what the other 60% are doing are putting their organics in a plastic bag and it's going into garbage. Yeah. How is this proposal not an improvement on that?
It will improve it, for sure, I think. You will get better participation, but you don't have to do that by only allowing plastic bags. You do that by allowing certified plastic bags and upping your promotion and education. So I think, again, the choice is yes, we need to improve participation. It's poor. We need to make it easier. We need to promote it more heavily. And we need to allow people to do the right thing by encouraging, if they are worried about the yuck factor, that they, in fact, can use these compostable bags, which are available and are used and promoted by every other big municipality in the province, pretty much. Toronto, I think, was cited, but they have a slightly different process. They go to an anaerobic system that's different than ours. They're the big one that's an outlier on that, but they still allow compostable bags, too.
And you said that twice, that allow people to do the right things. Currently, we buy at our home the paper bags that are allowed in the green bin, but not many people do that.
Well, that's what I do.
There's a cost issue, there's a convenience issue, it's Tuesday night, get it out of the house, and
well, I think there's a list of choices.
Living issue. So my question is, in the reality that we have to deal with, and having to go out, get the bag, or what's your recommendation for this council? What's your recommendation for this committee in the reality that we're dealing with?
Well, I think the first reality is you don't need a liner at all. So, I mean, that's option number one.
Yes.
Right? So you don't need a liner at all.
The reality is we're at 40% participation.
But I put my stuff in the little bin that I have in the kitchen, and I make the little origami, a newspaper hat. I still buy a newspaper every day, actually two. So, yes. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing would be to say use certifiable compostable bags. And let's not get into problems. Why create a problem in the plant when you don't have to? I mean, that's the bottom line. You can get just as much value out of promoting certified compostable bags as a plastic bag. So given the choice, why would you not take the more sustainable compostable option as opposed to a problem which, in fact, is just going to have to be taken out? You create a plastic bag problem, but you've got to take it out when you get it to the plant. And the problem is you may not get it all out, and a staff report says the compost quality is going to go down with what you have in front of you. So I think the option is to say no to plastic bags, no to dog waste, yes to certified compostable bags.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. I have no others on the list for Mr. Berry. Thank you very much for coming today. Next we have Jim Pushinsky. Is he here? Yes, there we are. Followed by Daniel Martins.
Yes, my name's Jim Pushinsky, and I'm representing Ottawa Citizens Against Pollution by Sewage. I want to point out that there's something larger than the question of putting dog poop in plastic bags and green bin collections happening here. As we concerned citizens who are living in the rural areas in and around Ottawa and other cities see it, this larger problem is the spreading of half of North America's concentrated city sewage as fertilizer on rural agricultural lands, because there is reason to believe it is causing illness in the rural population and widespread contamination of the air, water, soil, and food chain. Ottawa has been trying to spread all 45,000 annual tons of its sewage sludge biosolids on local crops as free fertilizer to farmers with costs paid for by city taxpayers.
I am sorry to interrupt, but you are aware that you need to be addressing the actual issue of this contract as opposed to spreading sewage.
If you will just listen to me, you will understand.
Wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Okay, and give me another 30 seconds. Okay. All the farmer has to do is plant and harvest the crop. All expenses are paid for by the city. This is a huge cost savings for farmers who are willing to contaminate their fields with the 80,000 chemicals from industry and street runoff and garbage dump leachate that's in the sewage sludge and not tested for. As well, the so-called treated sewage sludge still contains most pathogens that make people sick, including pathogens mutated into superbugs by exposure to all the antibiotics in sewage. And over the longer term, breathing the infectious prions in the blowing dust is a likely cause of the higher incidence of fatal dementias in rural areas. Our overriding concern is the province's plan to allow cities to get rid of sewage sludge by mixing it with green bin waste for unregulated use by farmers and the public. By doing so, there will no longer be records kept of where sewage sludge has been applied to land, so the health and environmental safety studies we've been calling for cannot be done, and held accountable for harm arising from the distribution throughout the environment of the most toxic waste our cities are producing. The move to include dog poop and diapers with human feces from sick people in the green bin collection is preparing the way for sewage sludge to be added. In Ottawa's case, the original 20-year contract the city signed with Order World to pay for 80,000 tons a year likely was intended to include the city's sewage waste, as less than half the contracted amount is needed for household waste. However, the legislation was put on hold due to our unanswered questions about growth of pathogens remaining in the sewage during storage. The unexplained shortfall of city green bin feedstock is what is now being given as the reason to allow dog poop in diapers and plastic bags. And the province is applying ever more pressure to move towards putting sewage in green bin compost by preparing to pass legislation banning organic waste that includes keeping organic sewage from being landfilled with garbage to save space in the dumps by using it for a green purpose. This includes using the green bin compost in city parks and flower beds. Saving space in the garbage landfill by spreading Ottawa's most toxic waste in our food lines makes no sense, particularly since sewage sludge is 70% water, and with an anaerobic decomposition shrinks to just 10% of its initial volume in the landfill. The actual reason appears to be to prevent sewage smells near the garbage landfills so that residential subdivisions can be built there. There is no concern for rural people subjected to such smells and aerosols by having 10 tons of city sludge allowed to be spread per acre on land as close as 50 meters from their houses, barns, schools, hospitals, and senior housing. The other reason cited for banning organic waste from landfills is to use it for a green purpose. The very word organic is music to people's ears who think of organically raised food. In fact, the government's official definition is any chemical compound containing carbon, which includes PCBs, pesticides, herbicides, flame retardants, and other carcinogens and chemicals constituting some 30% of sewage biosolids by dry weight. Sewage treatment is another misleading concept, as the treatment is primarily to reduce biomass by 50% through anaerobic microbial digestion that turns it into methane gas, not to reduce harmful ingredients. In conclusion, we would like Ottawa's mayor and councillors to keep dog feces and human feces in diapers and plastics out of the green bin compost and investigate the larger context of safely disposing of the city's most pathogenic and toxic waste, utterly destroying all chemical compounds using high temperature, low oxygen gasification and or non-oxygen pyrolysis technology, while beneficially generating biogases for energy and reclaiming pure metallic elements for recycling. Our repeated past requests for the city to use the Plasco demonstration plant for this purpose were never discussed. However, there is good reason to believe sewage have made an ideal uniform feedstock that didn't cause the jam-ups and system breakdowns from using garbage. And we ask that Ottawa join with other municipalities in requesting the provincial government delay legislation banning organic waste from landfills until such gasification pyrolysis plants are built and operating. In the meantime, we ask that you reimpose Ottawa's former ban on spreading sewage sludge on farmland and have it safely landfilled with garbage again for the common good of our health and the environment that sustains all life.
Thank you very much, and right on time. Do we have any questions for the delegation from committee members? No? Seeing none, I thank you for coming today. Great. Next, we'll have Daniel Martins, followed by John Edmund. And I'll just do a quick attendance, if I might, here. Is John Edmund in the room? John Edmund? Ah. He's here. Okay, just stepped out. And I'm assuming that the number has dwindled here, so maybe some have not been able to stay. I know Doug Thompson is still here, and Jason Garlow is here. So that will be the end of our speakers list. Yep. Welcome. Please introduce yourself, and if you're representing a particular organization, then go ahead.
Yes, I'm Dan Martens. I'm a Vice President of North America for Novamont North America for Novamont SPA. I'm here representing BPI. I sit on the BPI board since a couple times. I also chair the Communication and Outreach Committee. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here, and I hope that I can share some information and contribute. So BPI is a certification body, compostable products. It has been around since 1999. It promotes the use and the appropriate end-of-life materials in the composting environment, and this is the BPI certification. It's a third-party body. It's based on scientific standards to help identify products that are truly compostable, and the certification is based on ASTM standards and also on the European specifications. It's safe to say that the original certification was put together with U.S. Composting Council and composters, so it was based on a real life experience, but then taken to a controlled environment and used in lab conditions, which make it a more controllable standard. When you see the BPI logo, the goal, of course, is to assist in the diversion of organic waste to composting, but also to certify and verify products. So when you see the BPI logo, you get industry integrity, you get consumer confidence, manufacturer credibility, product security, and trusted and respect. And it's a trusted and respected benchmark for the industry. It's easily recognized and scientifically accredited. Please insist on BPI certification. Like I said, when standards must be clear, they must be BPI certified. This assures that products and materials are municipal composting. BPI members represent the industry, product suppliers, and distributors. All are working to ensure diversion from organic waste from landfills and credible and confident composting in the compost landscape. Here are some of the other members of the board. As you can see, there's some very familiar names there as well. So we support composting integrity by requiring that BPI products, certified products are used, and by supporting BPI program for compostable certifications, you are bringing integrity, bringing confidence, and assuring composters that are getting truly compostable products. So compostable bags are important to municipal SSO programs. Products that are certified, third-party certified with BPI, give assurances to the community and composters that products will perform to industry compostable standards. And case studies from Italy, France, USA, and Canada show that the use of certified compostable bags with appropriate collection bins, they increase residential capture rates, lower contamination rates, and if the goal is to remove organic material from landfill, the proven state of the art is compostable bags and appropriate collection bins. By specifying only certified compostable bags for SSO collections, additional and processing equipment is not needed, less back-end screening is required, saving costs and increasing product quality, and this also increases the total compost volume output versus input. Certified bioplastic compostable bags need to be recognized as a valuable tool used in harmony with composters, municipalities, and residents to achieve greater overall SSO and environmental goals. It is also, I'd like to note that at the G7 meeting last June, it was in Italy. It was hosted by Novamont. There were high-level meetings between the Canadian Minister of the Environment with CIC, the Council of Italian Composters, and Novamont to basically discuss best practices in food scrap collections, since Italy is touted as a global leader in the landscape of collecting food scraps and composting. Those meetings will continue. There are some very good European case studies, Canadian case studies, and US case studies that show that using breathable, certified, compostable bags with the appropriate vented pails or pails will increase and reach those goals we're trying to do, which is greater participation and less contamination. I think that's really all I had to say, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Right on time as well. So I know I've got a couple of people who would like to ask questions. First of all, Councillor Eglai.
So maybe you can help clarify this. One of my colleagues, I can't remember which, it may have been Councillor Brockington, asked another one of the delegations if he knew how many businesses in the Ottawa area actively used compostable bags for their customers. Is that something that you can?
Sure, I think I can. I mean, I can speak for North America in total. I'm fairly familiar with. I think the question was more about, grocery sacks and produce bags that we're giving out to consumers as opposed to compostable bags that are purchased on the shelf. As far as I know, there's nobody really in Canada that's doing compostable tea sacks produce bags, they are available. They haven't been mandated. Of course, compostable bags are available on the shelf to be purchased in all formats, in all different outlets. So they are available. Real quickly, just the European models. In Italy, they've banned all plastic bags with an allowance for compostable shopping bags. They also have compostable produce and on-the-shelf compostable bags. The reason they do that is because there's a very mature composting stream, and all the bags that are used for shopping bags have a second use to be used in the green bin program. In France, they banned all plastic bags. Tea sacks were not really an issue, but produce bags were. So they use produce bags. They also have the on-the-shelf bags that people can buy. So they have the availability to do both. They're also home compostable certified, because in France they don't have the mature infrastructure that Italy has. I'm sorry. So they do that. In California, they banned the tea sacks, with the exception that you can use compostable tea sacks. They don't have any reference to produce bags, and for that, it's for any community where they have curbside pickup, where they have more than 50% of the residents participating, and where the municipality, i.e. composters, agree to accept them. In Cambridge, outside of Boston, they have neither of those, but they banned plastic produce bags, and they're used there for their composting program, but they still have plastic. And they have the on-the-shelf, for example, Glad bags in stores. So it's a very
the short answer is they don't.
There's none that I know of.
Businesses don't. And does your organization serve a lobby function as well? Or is it just, like, would you go to the law, would you go to the Sobeys, would you go to the Loblaws and say, we think this is a route that you should be going to? You have people who could provide the product to you?
Yes. BPI is not a large organization. It's an important organization, but it's not a large organization. We don't have... we can facilitate lobbying. We certainly can go talk to people. We were part of the Loblaw test they did with compostable shopping bags about 5 years ago in Toronto. We facilitated that. So the answer is yes. However, we don't have a paid lobbying staff. We have lobbyists here in Canada we could use.
So you mentioned 5 years ago you worked. What happened there? Why wasn't it adopted?
The short answer was that at the time they were expecting a bag ban for compostable, for shopping bags, so they wanted to be readied with a backup of compostables. We did a test with 5 stores in York region. It worked fine. Really, the biggest problem was that they cost more. I mean, this is just the short answer is that they cost more, and then the bag ban didn't go through, so there was no reason to push for the compostable.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So is there a significant, if I'm a large retailer and I'm buying 100,000 bags, for example, is there a huge price point difference between buying the plastic and buying the biodegradable or compostable bags?
Yes, it's significant. It's not insignificant. It's not large. You're probably looking at maybe a 2 or 3 times the cost. I would say probably 3 to be conservative, since I don't represent a bag manufacturer here that makes tea sacks.
No. Fair enough. I asked a question, I think, because one of the things that staff is struggling with is people, and I think Councillor Brockton spoke to this as well, people don't want to spend money, or they don't seem to want to spend money on the green bin program. They're saying to us, we're already paying for the service of having the garbage picked up, why do we need to spend more? So I think that's what staff is struggling with, and I think that's where the recommendation comes forward to include the plastic bags or whatever you have hanging around the house, whether it's produce bags or tote bags or whatever.
Can I just quickly comment from the European experience? When people just use a plastic bag to collect organics, it's viewed as a garbage bag. And you see a lot of rates, and I have case studies I certainly would love to share at another time where this proves out. However, when people pay for a compostable bag, for example, I'll use, since it was presented here, a Glad bag that costs 10 cents. It is a designated bag that costs 10 cents for collecting organics. It's treated with much more respect, and only organics go into that bag, not garbage. We have Milan studies as well that show this out. So when you say that people don't want to pay, you have to remember that the compostable bag isn't just another plastic bag. It's a tool that's used in a circular way, which is part of our Canadian initiative, to better collect food scraps. And if it's positioned that way as opposed to an anti-plastic alternative, which everyone will say, okay, now government is making me pay more because blah, blah, blah. However, if it's there to collect food scraps, if you have a Glad bag, compostable, certified, that costs, she said 10 or 15 cents, you respect that bag and you use it for that. You don't waste them. And that's a behavioral proves out in the study, and we'd love to do those studies here. But so saying that, hey, if you're treating it just as a garbage bag, you're going to get garbage. If you treat it as a tool used to collect food scraps and promote it that way, you'll get food scraps. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the answers that you just provided to Councillor Eglai. Some quick clarifications for me. I have not been able to find on BPI's website what exactly the standard is, but I just want to confirm because I found on a third-party site what the standard is. So the standard is, the BPI standard is based on the ASTM D6400.
Correct.
So that's obviously ASTM is a well-respected certification body, and what they've set out is a 4-component standard in order to get ASTM D6400. In order to get that, it must disintegrate quickly, leaving no visible residue that has to be screened out. Correct. Biodegrade fully or convert rapidly to carbon dioxide, water, and biomass. Result in compost that supports plant growth, and not introduce high levels of regulated metals into the soil. So BPI is testing against that standard, and if it meets those 4 criteria for the compostable bags, then it gets the BPI stamp.
Correct.
Very interesting.
So they're the third-party certification, but they don't write the standard. They're not industry coming together and making a standard that we approve as an industry. It's a government standards board. It's based originally on the European EU standard. They're practically identical, different numbers, but if you look at that one, and it's basically it's similar standard to the Australian standard, it's similar standard to the Japanese standard, et cetera.
You mentioned, and you took a conservative estimate, that the bags might cost 3 times as much as one that doesn't meet the standard. How much of that is a function of scalability? That they simply aren't manufacturing enough today to bring the cost down to something that would be more comparable. Is comparable pricing something that could be met by increasing demand?
Economies of scale definitely play a part. There just isn't a lot of, there's not a lot of people making it. You have to applaud the guys who do, because it's not even a core business for the most case. However, I doubt that with you gotta remember, polyethylene is not made from oil, it's made from gas. Natural gas, and right now a lot of natural gas, which is the low end, is coming from fracking gas. That's really cheap. So we're using plant-based materials that are compostable. So to say that even with total economy of scale will ever be the same or cheaper, I can't say that. It's hard for me to logically think that. However, there are economies of scale. Since I've been doing this for 10 years, the price has only come down on materials, and we're tied to the food markets, not to the petroleum markets. So with economies of scale, the price comes down, and it only has, and of course, more support from municipalities, for example, i.e. the Italian market only makes things larger, more competitors come in, more suppliers could be made. You've got your University of Guelph that's doing some very nice things with biomaterials, and that gets supported. So for a circular economy conversation, it really hits a lot of buttons, besides the fact that a composter doesn't like it, or a consumer doesn't want to pay for it, or every individual thing, but on a total circular economy, it supports the whole food scrap diversion program.
But it sounds like a little bit of market intervention, a little bit of a government nudge could help to bring some of those prices down by increasing the demand.
Yes, that's just the economics. Again, it depends on the municipality. You have California, which took a mandate approach. You have Italy that took a mandate approach, but then you also have, outside of Boston, you have retailers that just did it on their own because they thought it was the right thing to do and thought it was a positive thing, even when the food scrap, even when they weren't made to do it.
Is there the potential, is there anyone else out there who is certifying bags as compostable that aren't meeting that ASTM standard? Is there the potential for market confusion?
There could be. It's a fairly small industry, and BPI has been doing it the longest, is the most developed in North America. You also have the Canadian standards that are also, I believe they do that. I can't speak for them, but I think they're reputable. They certainly follow the same international standards. I see all kinds of goofy stuff out there. There's also some very strong lobbying groups. There's also green guide laws. There's a lot out there. When you said, someone mentioned about being labeled compostable, and what's that mean? There's also laws on the books that in California, Minnesota, I can't remember, where basically you can't use that word unless it's certified to AS 6400. Right. In New York City, they won't accept anything, or they will accept anything that's certified BPI. So that's a standard. So, and that includes the coffee pods. BPI certifies, we're talking about compostable bags specifically, but remember, paper bags can be BPI certified, coffee pods can be BPI certified, a myriad of other things, cutlery, et cetera, and also they can be not certified. So we hope there's a high level of integrity associated with our logo.
So if we wanted to go down the path of ensuring that people are using something that is truly compostable, then we would need probably to do a fair bit of education with our marketplace in order to make sure that was understood.
Yeah, we hope that through BPI that we solve a lot of that for you. Ideally, if BPI had the recognition and also the status of being a certifying body in the marketplace, people could feel comfortable just seeing the BPI logo, which each individual manufacturer has a name, a number associated with them with that one product that could be researched on the web. Then you could actually go back and find out if it's real or not. But I guess, I don't know, I appreciate the question. I want to take my time, but I think that's interesting, just as a last comment, if I may. In Norway, 15, 20 years ago, they started using a closed bin, collecting food scraps, and it basically turned into a slop bucket. Today, 15 years, and people didn't participate. 15 years later, it's all compostable bags with vented pails. So the evolution has gone from the slop bucket to bags with pails. I think that here in Ottawa, which is a nice opportunity, is we're sort of starting with a clean slate. And I would recommend that if we could only have compostable bags, like other cities do, like Seattle, not accept plastic bags. We can sort of start at the end of the evolution instead of stubbing our toes all the way across, but I can't speak for anyone. That's just what I would love to see.
Really quickly, you mentioned, Loblaw didn't proceed with a compostable TSAC. Theoretically, could a TSAC be adopted by the large retailers? Would it survive a second use as a scrap collecting bag in a pail?
Yes, that's where there's food scrap collection programs. That's where they get the second use and where the economics use out. In Italy, where they've had almost 10 years of compostable TSACs, they found that what happened, and this again research I can present, the total use of TSACs, compostable plastic, went down by 50%. People started using carry-out bags for their food. On-the-shelf bags that were sold at retail did not decline because people still like having a nice right-sized bag for their bins. And the compostable TSACs were only used for food scrap. Now, where they weren't used, which is, I'm throwing out the all the negatives as well, is sometimes if you're carrying something you really like any bag, if it gets a hole in it and then it leaks, and then they complain, hey, I paid 15 cents, but that's a small gripe. But the net effect has been positive in collecting food scraps, which was always the goal.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions for this delegation, thank you for coming. And we are down to John Edmund, who will then be followed by Doug Thompson and Jason Garlow. This is a heads up to everyone. It is my intention, following these three delegations, for us to take, I'll decide, look at the clock, but a 20 to 25 minute break after that, and then we'll come back and go into full questioning of staff and debate.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing from me. I don't have any special expertise in recycling. I'm a homeowner. I don't have a special interest. I sometimes think of terms of interest in the environment that we need to remember the words of Justice Douglas of the U.S. Supreme Court, who said, "Who will speak for the trees?" So my expertise is in putting out my food waste and other recyclables every week, which I do diligently. I did file a short brief last week, which some of you may have seen, and if you've read it, I appreciate that. Thank you. What I'm here for is to register my opposition to the idea of including plastics in the food waste recycling stream. And the reason for that is something that, I've just been drawn to this issue in the last week with radio interviews and press reports, and I've come to the conclusion, as I say, without any particular expertise, that this is a bad idea. And that is because not primarily because of the $600,000 cost, but primarily because, as I understand it, the plastics will be dealt with, will be processed by a that will not extract all of the plastics, and there will be a lot of plastic remaining in the food waste in the compost afterwards, and thereby degrading the product and making it less valuable, less useful. Now the so-called yuck factor has been mentioned, and I believe Councillor Brockington raised the question earlier, what can we do to address the problem of compliance? Certainly the problem of compliance is a serious one. That's a given, that's the issue that you have. But the question of the issue of the yuck factor, in my view, is something of a red herring. I think it's a bit of a false issue. I think if you ask people why they aren't recycling, and you offer them the excuse, or it comes to mind that they have, that if they use plastic bags, that would make it easier. I don't know what evidence there is that they would carry through on that. And of course, you can't prove that until you try it. I appreciate that. But the fact is that recycling is a civic duty. I don't want to sound too moralistic about it, but people should take it seriously, and they should recycle to the extent that the programs are available. With all due respect, this program has, of course, the best of intentions, but I do see it, frankly, as somewhat naive. I think there's a lot of wishful thinking in the proposition that use of plastic bags will encourage compliance. It may do that slightly. I think the downsides more than offset that. The fact is, and I don't have expertise in saying what these coercive measures should be, but I think coercive measures have to be introduced in order to get people to comply to a greater extent. I mean, I really think that there's, you know, this program, as I say, is well-intentioned. I think it's designed to offend nobody. And although the fact is, it will offend those of us who believe that this is a bad idea and that plastic should not be introduced. But I think there needs to be a program that will offend the irresponsible and will bring them on board. Maybe reluctantly, but we'll do it. I have a bag of tricks here, which things you've seen, of course, you're very familiar with, but I think they've been lost sight of in the talk about yuck factor and newspapers and so on, the use of newspapers and the general messiness. This is one of two bags that one of two bins we have in our kitchen. These bags are about 30 cents a piece. They're, once you put them in, they are stiff. They're, that is, they don't fold in, so they stay open. You can just drop things in easily. They're not impervious, but they're much resistant to leakage. They're about 30 cents a piece, widely available, as opposed to a floppy plastic bag, which, if they're introduced, I would suppose the city would then have to produce new bins that would hold them open so they could be used. So
your time is up. If you could please summarize, please. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Your 5 minutes are up. If you could please sum up.
So that's my points are up. I just think that it's a mystery why increasing plastic into the composting process would be would improve compliance. I don't believe it would. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please hold there. I know Councillor Cloutier had questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond, for your presentation. Did you use the word, and this is just for clarifying, coercive? We should use coercive methods to increase compliance?
It's a strong word. I just mean that there should be, and I don't know, there are experts on this, and I don't know the means.
No, I'm not judging the word.
I'm making criticisms without having positive.
So, and you did say in your presentation several times, people should, and that's exactly the system I have at my house, but we're only getting 40% currently.
Well, you know, you're getting into an area that I can't really speak to, but I believe that there are stronger measures. I've heard of, for instance, clear bags, user pay systems, and so on. To the extent that those work, I really can't speak to that. But I think other measures, rather than introducing plastic, would be considered.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for attending.
My plastic bottle, by the way, I've had for many years. It's reclosable at the top.
All right. Good for you.
Thank you.
We now have Doug Thompson. Is Doug still here? Saw him there for a while. Seems to have left now. So we will move on to Jason Garlow.
Thanks. Cool. Hello, Council and Chair, Councilors, staff. So I left all my hats at home. This morning I'm speaking as a resident and a pet owner. Where's all the pet owners today? So pet owner is a big responsibility in our city here. When we brought our pets home, we had to fill out you trusted me to fill out paperwork and vaccination and annual licenses and other responsibilities. And you treated us like an adult. I like that. And I'm a good tax-paying citizen. I try to be, as is the rest of my and so we did everything. It surprised me, though, that a year ago, I didn't have the same amount of municipal responsibility, of paperwork, of tags, of vaccinations when we brought home my first child from the Civic. And, you know, and don't get me started on how much solid waste that kid generates, and the yuck factor. I mean, no, we won't even go there because that's a different thing. But back to pet ownership, I know that the city currently wants all dog owners to be flushing the dog poo down the sewers, and it's very clear on the city's Waste Explorer and that's what we want each and every dog owner to do. Not the landfill, not in the recycling, not in the green bin, right? And there's good reasons for that, is what I'm told when I read the city's reports. So sitting here, I'd have to remind us, I looked at the city's website and put this up. The city says $102,000 is the median family income here. So even though Ottawa has we're the second highest family income along major Canadian cities. So it worries me a bit that we're spending so much time on saving homeowners like 10 cents maybe on bags, that we're helping them to hold their hand with yuck factors. Like, you can treat most of us as adults. You can treat us like adults. I also have to remind you that if you look at the average annual income in Ottawa, so the average per person income, it depends on the methodology you use, if you include my kid or not, like in that number. It's around $43,000 a year is the average. And so we're, on average, our citizens are among the top 1% richest people based on income in the entire planet Earth. So if we can't afford 10 cents a bag or something, who can? We're in trouble. So I'd like to tell you my big concern about the plastic bags and the dog waste. Putting those into the compost, I'm really concerned as a composter that it degrades the quality. These are the Ontario Compost Quality Standards. The city report says that our current finished material is AA, unrestricted use compost. That's the best stuff. And I take pride in my green bin recycling, and so does our family, that when we put stuff in the green bin, our city is running this great program to make this AA grade compost that can be used in our parks, that can be used in gardens to grow vegetables, and it could be exported to our neighbors and across borders, and even to our friends in the global south. And if they don't have enough BS, they can use some of our great compost in the States. So I worry, though, that compost quality standards, I just did a quick search last night on Google, and I found out that if the thing that takes it from category AA down to category B or category A or unprocessed organics or even the worst case scenario beneficial use products, those are worth the least, are things such as small plastic particles. So there's thresholds for the small number of small plastic particles. There are also thresholds for E. coli and salmonella. These are things that I would expect would come with dog waste and plastic bags. And that's been proven in other municipalities. I'm just a bit concerned about that. I also support the recommendation for education. So the $600,000 a year in education, that's amazing. I also support the dog waste pilot project. Let's put some bins in there right now. Let's put them in tomorrow, but just deliver it to the sewage treatment facility, which is where you, the city, are telling us dog owners to put our dog waste right. So yeah, let's do the pilot project, just take it to the right place. But for the education, I'm recommending that maybe you look at other ways of not just doing it all yourself. If you gave $100,000 a year to local nonprofit organizations, we can leverage other funds outside of the city budget. So things like Eco Action could match it to $100,000, that's federal money. We could take at $200,000 and match it through foundations such as the Ontario Trillium Foundations, a nonprofit organization, The city can't. The city can't access that eco-action funding. They can't access the Trillium Foundation. And then a nonprofit or a bunch of nonprofits would have at least $300,000 a year to spend on education, and even hire the same consultants and make it a nonprofit discount rate, because a lot of them offer nonprofit discount rates that they don't give to the city. And then that still leaves you money for hiring staff.
Your
and then
time is up, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Anyways, it's all there on the slide, so thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I believe Councillor Cloutier had questions. All right, no, it was someone else to the left of me. All right, Councillor
Thank you,
Rockland.
Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. When local stores charged a nickel for a plastic bag, do you think plastic bag consumption went up, down, or stayed the same?
I don't know.
It went drastically down, in some shops by 90%. And it's because people don't want to pay a nickel for a plastic bag on principle. Some people leave Loblaws holding their goods like this because they don't want to pay the nickel. When I think an investment in the nickel, in that case, is probably a good investment. So, having spoke to thousands of my residents, particularly those who don't use green bin, the fact that bags may cost a very marginal amount in the grand scheme of things, some people just won't pay. And that is a true reality, that even though it's hard for us to realize that concept, because I think it's an investment in quite frankly, our future, there are some people who won't. And so that's what I struggle with working with staff, and every group that wants to come here, is how do we convert those folks who have the bin, are physically capable of using the green bin, but don't for very, soft reasons.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and it's not easy. And I'm suggesting that maybe, and there's many households I know that can't even afford it. Like there are some, like even though the median, a lot of us are making a lot of money, some of us can't even afford it. And so that's why I'm recommending for this education. If you shift some of the education stuff to the nonprofit sector so that they can leverage other funding, that frees up $100,000, $200,000 that could be used to give an annual supply of bags to those who can't, or those who see that as a barrier. So I agree with you. I think that thinking creatively about these things, I can the Alibaba link where you can go and order these bags and give all of us a year's supply of bags in the same way that you have given us a green bin, and you replace it if it gets smashed. And like that costs the city money, and I love that as a citizen. So yeah, if it means that you have to step up and pay an extra $100,000, a way to find $100,000 to buy some bags for those that can't afford it, and that are certified in compost, I think that would be great, because I know as a citizen, it's easy to look at the numbers thing, but you also have to consider that there are a lot of people like me that love the environment and like making the best use of existing resources, and we'll pull out of the green bin program altogether if it's not going to be used for anything useful. I can put a composter in my backyard and recommend that all my neighbors do the same so that we can maximize make the best use of those food scraps and create good, healthy, rich, organic compost that can be used in our community parks, in our community gardens, and in our front lawns. So, yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Any further questions to Mr. Garlow? No, seeing none, thank you. And unless I am mistaken, that is the end of the delegation list today. It is approaching 20 past 12. I suggest we reconvene at 1:45 and ready to ask our questions and debate. Thank you.